We are here this evening because President Trump's illegal war of choice in Iran is an unmitigated disaster. More than a month in, here is where we are. 13 American troops are dead and hundreds of soldiers are injured. Tens of billions of American taxpayer dollars have been burned through. Where do we even start when we talk about the Straits of Hormuz? Iran has now taken near control of the strait, only for the president to send in troops to stand in harm's way to block off Iran's ports. Gas prices have surged more than $1 per gallon. Fertilizer costs are burning a hole in farmers' pockets. Iran still has a huge stockpile of enriched uranium, and the regime's resolve has only been strengthened. And the president has made it clear that he has zero, and I mean zero, plans to get us out of this war. This president is out of control, and Americans are paying the price. And that is why this week we will force the Senate to debate and vote on a war powers resolution. And until this president is reined in, we will continue to force these votes. That is why it's so important that my colleagues filed more resolutions today. Congress has a job to do, and that is to be a check on this president. We are all up here to say that we will use the levers we have to do that and stop this illegal war of choice. And the only question is if our Republican colleagues will join us and stand with the American people. And with that, I want to kick it to a champion in this fight, Senator Kaine.
Thank you, Tammy, and thanks to all of my colleagues for being here and this growing momentum. And I know we all heard it from our constituents as we traveled around our states during the recess. I spent a couple of days in Hampton Roads where a lot of our naval power is marshaled. And the Ford carrier and its strike group is about to break the record for the longest post-Vietnam deployment of any carrier. That will happen this week. They were supposed to be out for about 7 months, home by Christmas to be with their families. Instead, they were sent first, extended to send to the Venezuelan waters, and now to the Middle East. It's a ship that has had all kinds of challenges of the kind that normally occur when you run a ship much longer than it was planned to be. And so in Hampton Roads and all over Virginia, I heard concerns from family members. Will my son, will my daughter be deployed? When will my spouse come home? What is the reason? What is the plan in this illegal and unwise war? Talk about the magnitude of the ineptitude of this. The vice president attempted to do a negotiation in Pakistan, and when he finished, and there was no meeting of the minds, he went to a microphone and he said, "We can't allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon." This was an administration that took a deal that was controlling Iran's program and tore it up. And Donald Trump is now waging a war with our troops being killed and others being injured and civilians being killed and dollars being expended, Americans paying more at the pump, to try to find a deal on a nuclear weapon that he had and tore up in his first term. Let me read a sentence from the first page of the deal that Donald Trump chose to tear up. Iran reaffirms that under no circumstances will Iran ever seek, develop, or acquire any nuclear weapons. He had that deal, and he tore it up, and now American troops are being killed as a result. Oh, and now the president is undertaking military action to reopen the Straits of Hormuz. They were open on the 27th of February. They were only closed because, again, of this war of choice, illegal and unwise, that is killing Americans, killing civilians, and wasting taxpayers' money. And that's why this group is growing. We're filing war powers resolutions. We have colleagues who want to avoid at all costs a public discussion of this war, the lack of a rationale, and the consequences of it. We will not let them do so. And we're confident that if our colleagues begin to listen to their voters in the same way that we listened to our constituents the last 2 weeks, we will find a moment where enough will join us and we can bring an end to this unwise, unjust, and illegal war. And now a colleague who's been working on this for long before this particular war started, the important role that Congress needs to play before we go to war. Chris Murphy of Connecticut.
Thank you very much, Tim, for your tremendous leadership. So listen, we're going to have a debate and a vote every week in the United States Senate until either this war comes to an end or our Republican colleagues decide to do their constitutional duty. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee has still not had a single open hearing on a war that has cost more than a dozen American lives, that is devastating the American economy, that has led to the outbreak of crippling regional conflict and is costing tens of billions of dollars. That is absolutely extraordinary. We have 6 new colleagues who are announcing this week that they are also filing resolutions of disapproval, which means we have lots of resolutions teed up to continue to make sure that we have this debate and this vote on the Senate floor. I think Senator Kaine is right. As this war grows more and more unpopular, as the cost to regular Americans gets higher and higher, as this president's incompetence grows clearer and clearer, it is going to be harder for our colleagues to continue to unquestionably support this war. It is unreal that we are sitting here talking about addressing a closure of the Strait of Hormuz by closing the Strait of Hormuz. It sounds like it's out of a comedy, a science fiction movie, but America sees this for what it is, a war of choice that is costing American lives and American treasure. So what we're here to say is just very simply, if our Senate Republican colleagues won't do the right thing and have a debate and a vote, our numbers will grow, and we will continue to force this debate every week on the Senate floor. My thanks to Senator Booker for helping to lead this effort.
So I just want to make it plain. The American people do not want this war. The American people don't want higher costs. The American people don't want higher costs for food. The American farmers don't want higher costs for fertilizer. The American people do not want this war. What they want is a Congress that works. They want Congress to be holding oversight hearings, open public hearings. They want Congress to be a check and a balance. They want a Congress to do its job. I am deeply grateful for the leadership of the people you see here today. We do not want what they want. Senate Republicans want business as usual. These are not usual times. We are in a moment of moral urgency. We have work to do. And so we're going to continue to do this. Our ranks are growing. More and more of us are saying no business as usual. We're going to force debate. We're going to force discussion. We're going to force votes on the Senate floor. We're going to continue to do everything we can for a war that is profoundly unwanted by the American people and causing so much harm. I want to bring forward now another one of our colleagues, another one of the people who is standing strong in this fight, forcing this debate on the Senate floor with these war power resolutions. I bring up Adam Schiff.
Thank you, Senator Booker. We have already lost 13 service members in the Trump-Iran war. We've had scores of other American service members injured, some of them very seriously injured. And just within the last week or so, we had 2 pilots thankfully rescued under very dangerous circumstance, which put a lot of other service members at risk. It is long past time for the U.S. Congress to assert its role to put an end to this conflict, to make sure that we reinstate Congress's authority to declare war or to refuse to declare war. We have spent billions and billions of dollars on a war the American people did not want, for which the administration never consulted Congress, in which we've had not a single open hearing to expose the American people the basis for this war, the cause of this war, the goals of this war. And as a result, we see this administration floundering in its war aims. We see actions that are internally inconsistent, and we see Iran potentially emboldened to try to now charge tolls in the Strait of Hormuz. All of this reflects a lack of foresight, It reflects, I think, the lack of Congress's scrutiny and participation. It reflects the fact the administration never came before the Congress to make the case for this war, let alone make the case to the American people. These resolutions will help force this issue. This isn't over by any means. The risk to our service members continues. The military expenditures continue. The lack of investment in the country, that is the terrible opportunity cost of the billions and billions of dollars being spent on this war, continue. And it's time for Congress to reassert itself. And I'm grateful for all of my colleagues and their efforts along that regard. It's now my pleasure to introduce someone who knows something about being a pilot, and we're grateful for your leadership, Mark Kelly, and also for all the insights you've given us on Artemis. And it's wonderful that we've had some good news to share.
Sure.
Mark
Thank
Kelly.
you. Thank you, Adam. Let me be pretty blunt. The American people are poorer and less safe because of this president. He got us into a conflict without a strategic goal, without a plan, without a timeline, without an exit strategy, and at this point, he is just flailing. Tried to get us out through a negotiation the other day. The vice president spent 21 hours, and at the end of that negotiation, I understand that the president was at a UFC fight, enjoying the evening with his Secretary of State. In what world does that make sense? That's how serious he is taking this. We have 13 dead Americans. We have 13 families out there that don't have fathers and mothers and brothers and sisters. There are 150 dead Iranian kids and probably in excess of another 1,000 Iranian civilians needlessly killed. Our magazine depths are somewhat depleted. PAC-3 rounds for SM-3s, THAAD rounds, or PAC for Patriots, SM-3 rounds, THAAD rounds, other munitions. We've spent billions of dollars, and this president does not have a plan. And now his latest thing is he's going to completely close the Strait of Hormuz and continue to drive up energy costs and food costs for the American people. So this resolution is something that clearly we need to get passed. Hopefully our Republican colleagues will see the error of their ways here on this issue and support this resolution and support an end to this conflict. Thank you. And with that, let me introduce Senator Jeff Merkley.
It was Madison writing to Jefferson who said the Constitution supposes what the history of all governments demonstrates, that it is the executive, the branch of power most interested in war and most prone to it, and thus the Constitution has accordingly, with studied care, put the question of war in the legislature. There is perhaps no example better supporting the wisdom of our founders than Trump's unauthorized war in Iran. The nuclear materials buried deep underground with no potential strategy for extracting them. The hardliners strengthened, the reformers weakened, and as my colleagues have emphasized, blood and treasure of the United States, and the lives of more than 1,000 Iranian civilians. So the War Powers Act created a mechanism, a stop sign, for Congress to say, we stand with the Constitution. We took an oath to the Constitution. We support the vision of the Constitution, which is to say, Mr. President, you want this war, you have to come and get authority. So each and every time we vote, and we're going to be doing it week after week after week, we are saying to the Senate and to the House, exercise your constitutional responsibility to stop this war. And if the President has a plan, he can come to Congress and ask for authorization, and we can have the debate we should have had beforehand. This war is a tragedy on every front, and it is our responsibility to end it. And I'm pleased to be able to introduce my colleague from New York, Senator Gillibrand.
I've just traveled around my state, and I can tell you the American people are angry, they are frustrated, and they are disgusted. When Donald Trump ran for president, he promised to lower costs. He promised to strengthen the economy, and he promised to be the president of peace. He lied. He has done none of that. He found money to build his ballroom and give tax cuts to billionaires that were funded by our health care and food assistance for Americans. Working families are struggling in President Trump's America. But instead of working to provide relief, President Trump has launched into a reckless war with no end in sight. This war has already cost the lives of 13 Americans, hundreds of children, and thousands of civilians. And it's caused our gas prices to skyrocket, to be higher than we've seen in years, putting further strain on the American people and their pocketbooks just trying to make ends meet. And when asked what his mission is, what's his purpose, what's his exit strategy, how will this war end, he says it will end when he feels it in his bones. But the most disgusting thing about this war is what President Trump said last week, that he wanted to destroy an entire civilization. Not only is that a war crime, not only is that against the Geneva Convention, it's inhumane and it's disgusting. The American people will not stand for this kind of presidency and this war. He doesn't have a strategy, he is reckless, and frankly, he is insane. This is why we are introducing these war powers resolutions. New Yorkers deserve a better president than what President Trump has been doing. He's supposed to be focused on costs, but no, he's got an endless war. It's time for Congress to act so that we can end this dangerous, illegal, and destructive war and focus on the real issues that matter to our constituents: lowering costs, creating jobs, and building a brighter future for America's families. It is my pleasure now to call up Senator Chris Van Hollen.
I want to thank my colleagues here and the overwhelming majority of the American people who are calling for an end to this war now. An end that was started by Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, a war that has made us less safe, not more safe, and a war that has made us much worse off, not better off. As my colleagues have said, but it bears repeating, we've lost 13 American service members in this war. Hundreds more wounded. Thousands of civilians killed in Iran, in Lebanon, and in Israel. It's costing American taxpayers, folks listening to us right now, $2 billion every single day as gas prices go up, oil prices go up, and of course they drive other prices up. And this from the president who said he was going to focus on lowering prices and ending wars. He lied, and people are dying. And as my colleagues have said, the president is now putting more lives at risk to open the Strait of Hormuz that was open before he started this war. He also, 3 weeks ago, told us we won. He has said we won more than 3 weeks ago. He said we won the other day. So what the hell are we still doing there if we won? Now, the reality is we didn't win, and the president is lying to the American people, but we can see from his own words that that's true. Instead of getting us out of the war, he's attacking Pope Leo. Attacking Pope Leo because Pope Leo is against war. Maybe Pope Leo, like all of us and the overwhelming majority of the American people, was horrified when he heard President Trump say and threaten massive war crimes against the Iranian people, saying he was going to end the Iranian civilization. And now we see the same president who attacked the Pope putting images of himself online as if he's Christ. This is a deranged man. This is a man that should have no connection to being commander-in-chief. It's a man who's putting Americans at risk, people around the world at risk. And so I just want to say, along with my colleagues, when you're looking at a president who's so unhinged, why is it we can only find one Senate Republican, Rand Paul, to say no, to say they're going to exercise their constitutional responsibilities and make sure we end this illegal war that is making us less safe? We're going to keep pushing, and I know the American people are going to keep pushing, because that's what we really need, for the American people to be calling all of their members of Congress, especially Republican senators right now, to demand an end to this war. And somebody who understands the national security apparatus well, having served in the executive branch, but now serving with us in the United States Senate, Andy Kim.
We're all returning to D.C. after having heard from our constituents, and I know I can speak for my colleagues here that all of us heard how angry and how livid the American people are about what's happening, because we're seeing this war that's being fought in our name, at our expense, but without our say. And it is absolutely appalling to see this type of behavior from the President of the United States, from this administration, but also congressional Republicans. I worked there at the White House during wartime. I saw what it meant for us to be able to send our servicemen and women and to be able to try to look after our own national security. Nothing that I see right now resembles anything that the American people should have to endure when we see this commander-in-chief who is unhinged and taking such dangerous actions, again, in our name, but without our say. I'm just tired of this. You know, as someone who worked in diplomacy before, nothing that we saw in Pakistan with these Iran discussions and negotiations resembled anything like what diplomacy and serious work should look like. It is appalling, it is embarrassing, but it is so dangerous because we cannot find an off-ramp at this point, and I worry that we're going to be stuck there for quite some time. As we see a president now basically playing chicken in the Strait of Hormuz. And who is it that's going to struggle and pay for this? It's the American people. Their costs are going to go up at the expense because of what this president is doing. So I'm glad to stand with my colleagues here who are doing such important work, standing up against this administration and doing everything that we can to be able to have Congress do what we were demanded of in the Constitution and also by the American people, which is to be able to stand up for our Constitution, stand up against this war. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Senator Warnock.
I was on my way to the sanctuary of my church early on Easter Sunday morning when I heard piercing through the sacredness of that moment the ugly words of Donald Trump. I want us to think about that. A sitting American president, early on Easter Sunday morning, dropping F-bombs while promising to drop actual bombs on civilians. Attacks against energy, on bridges, infrastructure, a war crime. Donald Trump said that he was the candidate for peace. He is a warmonger president. And he has dragged us into this illegal, unwise war right on the heels of 20 years and more in which the American people saw that in the Middle East it's easy to get into these wars. It's difficult to get out. He is failing. He is throwing things, hoping that they will stick. The next day after declaring that he would drop these bombs, he said that a whole civilization will die tonight. He is unhinged. And this has come at a great cost. My heart goes out to the family members of those 13 service members. Our Military members, they sign up to serve. And when the commander-in-chief tells them to show up, they show up. Doesn't matter whether it's a Democrat or Republican. That is a sacred honor and duty that they live up to. The least the Congress can do is live up to its duty and hold this administration accountable. The Constitution is clear. The declaration of war belongs to the Congress and not to the President. And we are calling on our Republican colleagues to stand up and do their job. The American people are clear. They do not want this war. And it's up to us to hold this unhinged, unaccountable president accountable. And with that, I turn the remarks over to Senator Tammy Baldwin as we answer any questions.
And what questions might you have?
Hi, Senator. Thanks. Can you talk a little bit about how, if you guys are planning to use the appropriations process to put a check on the president's activities in the Middle East? And do you think that we're at the point where the 25th Amendment is a reasonable, is a something that should be looked at? Is it realistic? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Look, I'm not going to rule out any options here, but what I will say is my focus is on what are more realistic options. So with regard to the 25th Amendment, I have little faith that Donald Trump's cronies on his cabinet are going to get on board with removing this president from office. As to your other question about appropriations, look, there's been ample amount of discussion about the administration seeking, I think it's $200 billion additional funding that would go through an appropriations process. What I can say about the committee is that we have typically worked on a very bipartisan basis. I don't know that there's a bipartisan appetite to do that, and I don't see where you get 60 votes in the Senate. So, and I don't know if my colleagues have any.
Good.
Okay.
Other questions?
Some Republican senators have said they see the 60-day mark as the inflection point. What do you all have to say to that, as them seeing the 60-day mark out from the start of the war as the point where they could start supporting a war powers resolution?
I'll speak for myself. We have seen too much devastation and harm, including to the American people, in the first over 30 days. 60 days is a long time from now. That's why we're asking for another vote this week, and we'll continue to do that. This war needs to end now.
Senator Schiff.
I just want to add something to that. In addition to the fact that we don't want to wait 60 days and see what other loss of life, loss of service members is occasioned within that period, but I also think it misreads the War Powers Act. The president needs to come to Congress in the absence of some imminent threat to the country or an attack on the country to seek an authorization. Otherwise, it's illegal to make war as he's doing. So in the first instance, there being no imminent threat to the United States, there being no imminent nuclear bomb, no imminent intercontinental ballistic missile, as our own intelligence community makes clear, it was a violation of law to begin this war. Now, had the president had an imminent threat or attack on the United States and initiated hostilities, then the clock that you're talking about comes into play. Because even a war that is legitimately brought in the absence of authorization because of an attack or an imminent threat, Congress can vote to bring an end to. So the clock really doesn't apply that way. Now, if we get to 60 days, I will be happy to have the support of our colleagues. I know we all will. But we shouldn't have to wait when this war was illegally brought and when the costs are already very real and when the danger to our service members continues.
Anybody else want to add? Yes, sir.
Senator, just to follow up, are you saying that you don't see the 60-day mark as significant then if you believe this war was illegal from the start? And also, when do you expect a vote this week on a war powers resolution in the Senate?
I'll just say quickly and then defer to my colleagues. If it will mean more Republicans vote for these resolutions when we reach 60 days, then it will be significant because it will mean that it will have even broader bipartisan support. As a legal constitutional matter, that threshold really doesn't apply here because the war was illegal from the start in the absence of any imminent threat or attack. But if it means that more come on board, we will welcome them on board. But the danger to our service members will continue every day this goes on between now and 60 days.
Yeah. Just to emphasize the point my colleagues have made, there's nothing in the Constitution that says the President of the United States gets to start a war and wage a war for 60 days without authorization for Congress. The Constitution says the opposite. If you're going to wage a war, you need authorization first. You don't get to wage a war for 60 days without congressional authorization.
And related to your question on timing of when we'll have this vote, we're working with the floor right now on that and expect it would be likely midweek. But I want to emphasize the points that were just made, which is my Republican colleagues could today decide to stand with us and vote on this war powers resolution. So that's what I want the focus to be on, is Republicans can join us at any moment to stop this war of choice.
Can I just add one thing here? I mean, and again, drawing attention to this, it's about this vote, but it's also, again, do our job more broadly. I mean, we have any number of hearings that we need to be pushing forward on to be able to, we need to hear from Secretary Hegseth and General Kane. We should have an exact accounting of exactly how much money this is costing the American people. Because by the time we hit 60 days, that's, given what we're hearing of close to $2 billion a day, that's going to be well over $100 billion by the 60-day mark. We should be hearing from Secretary Rubio and from other Secretary Besson about the impact on our economy. So again, those are actions that our Republican colleagues can take immediately, can do this week. And those are things that the American people absolutely deserve. When I came down the other day seeking a briefing from the Pentagon about the current state of this war, they said no. And they're not just saying no to me, they're saying no to the people of New Jersey, they're saying no to the American people, that we don't deserve to know what is happening again in this war waged in our name. So that is something we absolutely demand a change on.
So we're gonna wrap up. I'm gonna just add to my colleague from New Jersey. If we allow this as a Congress, this is the new standard. Donald Trump can wage war on Cuba next for 30, 60 days before having to consult Congress. Donald Trump could invade Greenland. These are not hypotheticals. He has said he's going to take Cuba. He said he's going to take Greenland. The standard this Congress, the Republicans in this Congress are saying is the president could attack any country, pledge billions of dollars, have multiple American lives lost, and there be no congressional action whatsoever until 60 days. That would shred the very ideals of the Constitution of the United States of America. It cannot be allowed. But if you're going to ask a simple question, what threshold? It should have been immediately when this president launched a war. It should have been immediately. If not that, then it should have been when American lives started to get lost. If it not that, then it should have been when our jets and planes were shot down. If not that, it should have been after a school of children were bombed and killed. At what point does Congress act? Does it hold an open hearing? Does it ask for accountability? Does it ask for an accounting? Does it ask and provide checks and balances? We are in this situation not just because of Donald Trump, but because of his congressional enablers that are allowing him day after day to conduct an illegal war costing the American people billions of dollars, American lives, and skyrocketing costs. The whole world is less safe right now because of Donald Trump. The whole world is in economic crisis because of Donald Trump. The whole world is in a state of crisis, and Americans are paying for it. So this group here, we are going to continue this. We are going to demand debates. We're going to use our positions to bring war powers resolution after war powers resolution because the Republicans don't want to talk about this. The Republicans don't want debates on the floor. They clearly don't want to have hearings because they haven't had them. This government, this democracy does not work when an executive out of control isn't checked by Congress. And so I'm grateful for the leadership you see here. We are going to continue to fight this battle. We're going to continue to not allow business as usual, and I'm grateful. Thank you.